Good morning/afternoon/evening, everyone. We often think of solitude as loneliness, as if being alone is something to be avoided. But what if I told you that true happiness comes not from external company, but from the strength we cultivate within? What if being alone wasn't something to fear, but an opportunity to grow? Happiness is often misunderstood. Many believe it is something to be found, something to be acquired through achievements, possessions, or relationships. We chase after external things, convinced that once we have them we will finally be happy. Yet time and time again, we see people who have everything, wealth, status, admiration, still feeling empty, while others with very little live in contentment. This contradiction forces us to ask, what if happiness isn't something we get from the outside, but something we cultivate within? From the moment we are born, society conditions us to seek happiness in external validation. As children, we are praised when we succeed and corrected when we fail. We grow up believing that if we perform well, we will be rewarded with approval. This pattern continues into adulthood, where we associate happiness with career success, social status, material wealth, or romantic relationships. We tell ourselves, once I get that promotion, I'll be happy. Or, once I find the right person, my life will feel complete. But whenever we reach these milestones, the feeling of fulfillment is temporary. Soon, a new desire takes its place, and the cycle begins again. The problem with tying happiness to external things is that they are all temporary. Material possessions can be lost, jobs can disappear, relationships can change, and admiration can fade. If our happiness is dependent on something we cannot control, then our inner peace is fragile, easily shattered by life's uncertainties. A person who relies on external validation for happiness will always be at the mercy of the outside world, constantly fearing loss and disappointment. True happiness, however, is independent of circumstances. It comes from mastering one's own mind, learning to be content regardless of what is happening around us. This kind of happiness is stable because it does not rely on shifting conditions, but on a deep understanding of what truly matters. A person who finds peace within does not need constant reassurance or material wealth to feel fulfilled. They are self-sufficient, drawing strength from their own thoughts rather than the approval of others. This is not to say that external things have no value. Relationships, achievements, and comforts can bring joy, but they should not be the foundation of our well-being. The difference lies in attachment. If we enjoy these things without depending on them for happiness, we remain free. We appreciate them while they last, but do not suffer when they change. A person who understands this does not fear loss, because their happiness does not vanish when circumstances shift. Cultivating happiness from within requires a shift in mindset. It begins with self-awareness, understanding our desires, fears, and attachments. Many of our struggles come from expectations we place on the world, believing life should unfold in a certain way. When reality does not match our expectations, we feel dissatisfied. Letting go of these rigid expectations allows us to embrace life as it is, rather than as we wish it to be. Another key to inner happiness is gratitude. When we focus on what we lack, we feel empty. But when we appreciate what we have, our health, our ability to think, the simple pleasures of daily life, we cultivate a sense of abundance. Gratitude shifts our perspective from wanting more to realizing that, in many ways, we already have enough. Lastly, inner peace comes from understanding that we are responsible for our own happiness. No one else can complete us or make us feel whole. The more we depend on others for validation, the more power we give away. But when we take responsibility for our own emotions, we gain control. Instead of seeking happiness in the outside world, we create it within ourselves. By realizing that happiness is a state of mind rather than a result of external circumstances, we free ourselves from endless chasing. We no longer look to possessions, status, or relationships to complete us. Instead, we find fulfillment in the simple act of being present, of accepting life as it is, and of understanding that everything we need to be truly happy has been within us all along. Detachment from what we cannot control is one of the most liberating practices we can adopt. Much of our suffering comes from our attempts to hold on to things that were never truly ours to control in the first place. Other people's actions, external circumstances, the past, and even the future. When we tie our peace of mind to these uncertainties, we set ourselves up for frustration, anxiety, and disappointment. True freedom comes when we learn to let go, accepting that some things are beyond our influence, while focusing only on what is within our power. Life is unpredictable, yet we often behave as if we can shape it exactly to our desires. We make plans, set expectations, and attach ourselves to specific outcomes, believing that if we just try hard enough, we can force things to go our way. But reality does not work like that. No matter how much effort we put in, there will always be elements that remain outside our grasp. A promotion may slip away despite our dedication, a relationship may end despite our love, or an unexpected setback may disrupt even the best-laid plans. When we refuse to accept these truths, we create unnecessary suffering for ourselves. We resist, we fight, and we stress over what is simply not within our power to change. Letting go does not mean giving up or becoming indifferent. It means understanding the limits of our control and choosing where to direct our energy. There is great wisdom in knowing the difference between what can be influenced and what must simply be accepted. If we waste time trying to control others' opinions, change the past, or predict the future, we drain ourselves emotionally and mentally. Instead, we can shift our focus to our own responses, attitudes, and choices. These are the only things truly within our power. When we learn to detach, we also free ourselves from emotional turbulence. Much of our distress comes from clinging to expectations that reality does not meet. We expect people to behave a certain way, and when they don't, we feel betrayed. We expect life to unfold according to our desires, and when it doesn't, we feel lost. But life owes us nothing, and others are not bound to meet our expectations. By releasing these attachments, we experience a profound sense of peace. We stop feeling personally attacked when things do not go our way, and instead we learn to adapt with grace. The fear of uncertainty often keeps us attached to control, but in truth, uncertainty is the nature of life. The more we resist this reality, the more we suffer. Instead of fearing change, we can embrace it, understanding that nothing is permanent. The people we love, the roles we play, the things we possess, everything is temporary. Holding on to them too tightly only causes pain when they inevitably shift. But when we accept impermanence, we find a new kind of freedom. We learn to enjoy what we have while it lasts, without fear of losing it. And when the time comes to let go, we do so without unnecessary grief. One of the most powerful aspects of detachment is that it gives us clarity. When we stop wasting energy on what we cannot change, we can focus on what truly matters. We begin to invest our time and emotions into things that align with our values, rather than reacting to every external situation. Our mental and emotional energy is no longer scattered by forces beyond our control, but rather channeled into meaningful action. Ultimately, detaching from what we cannot control is not an act of passivity, but of strength. It takes courage to trust life as it unfolds, to let go of resistance, and to surrender the illusion of control. But in doing so, we gain something far more valuable than certainty. We gain inner peace. We learn to live with acceptance, with resilience, and with the understanding that true power lies not in controlling the outside world, but in mastering ourselves. Solitude is often misunderstood. Many see it as loneliness, a state to be avoided, a sign of isolation or failure. People fear being alone, believing that happiness depends on the presence of others, on constant engagement, or on external validation. But solitude is not a punishment. It is an opportunity for self-discovery, inner peace, and personal growth. Those who learn to embrace solitude do not suffer in its presence. Rather, they thrive, finding strength and clarity that can never be achieved in constant noise and distraction. In solitude, a person is free from the influence of the outside world. There is no need to perform, no need to meet expectations, no pressure to conform. When alone, one can reflect without interruption, listen to their own thoughts without external interference, and truly understand themselves. The modern world is filled with distractions, constantly pulling people in different directions, making it difficult to hear one's own voice. Solitude offers a rare moment of stillness, a chance to step away from the chaos and ask the important questions. What truly matters to me? What do I want from life? What kind of person do I want to become? Many fear solitude because they have never learned to be comfortable with themselves. They seek distractions, filling every moment with noise, social media, entertainment, meaningless conversations, just to avoid being alone with their own thoughts. But when one stops running from solitude and instead embraces it, they discover that their mind is not something to escape from, but something to understand. In that understanding comes self-awareness, and with self-awareness comes the power to shape one's own life. Spending time alone also builds resilience. When a person depends too much on external company, they risk becoming emotionally fragile, unable to find happiness without others. But those who are comfortable in their own presence develop a deep sense of independence. They do not need constant validation or entertainment to feel fulfilled. They are self-sufficient, capable of enjoying life regardless of who is around. This strength allows them to engage with others not out of need, but out of genuine connection. They do not fear solitude, and because of that, they do not settle for meaningless relationships just to avoid being alone. Creativity and inspiration often flourish in solitude. Some of the greatest minds in history have valued time alone as essential to their work. When the mind is free from external chatter, it can think deeply, explore new ideas, and make connections that would otherwise go unnoticed. Artists, writers, philosophers, and thinkers have long understood that solitude is not an emptiness, but a space in which creativity can grow. It allows for deep concentration, original thought, and the ability to see beyond the surface of things. Solitude also teaches a person to appreciate life in a different way. When constantly surrounded by others, one often moves through life without truly noticing it, caught up in conversations, obligations, and external distractions. But in solitude, one can fully experience the present moment, the beauty of nature, the stillness of a quiet morning. The simple joys of life become more vivid. Without the constant pull of social interaction, one can fully engage with the world on a deeper level, appreciating it not for how it appears to others, but for how it feels in its purest form. Embracing solitude is not about rejecting social connections, but about finding balance. It is about realizing that happiness does not depend on the presence of others, but can be found within. Those who see solitude as an opportunity rather than a punishment discover an inner world full of richness, wisdom, and strength. They are not lonely in their solitude, they are free. Life is in a constant state of change, yet humans have a deep tendency to resist this truth. We seek stability, security, and permanence in a world where everything is fleeting. Relationships evolve, circumstances shift, people come and go, and even the strongest structures eventually fade. Despite knowing this, we often cling to the illusion of permanence, believing that if we hold on tightly enough we can prevent things from slipping away. But this resistance only leads to suffering. True peace comes when we accept the impermanence of life, embracing change rather than fearing it. Every moment we experience is unique, never to be repeated in exactly the same way. The people we love, the experiences we cherish, and even the struggles we endure are all temporary. This impermanence can feel unsettling, especially when we try to grasp onto moments, fearing their loss. But it is precisely because things are temporary that they hold meaning. If life were unchanging, if everything remained the same forever, there would be no growth, no new experiences, and no appreciation for the present. It is the awareness that nothing lasts forever that allows us to truly value what we have while it is here. The fear of loss often drives people to hold on too tightly, to possessions, relationships, even past versions of themselves. They resist change because it threatens their sense of stability. But no matter how tightly one holds on, change is inevitable. People grow apart, circumstances shift, and the things that once brought happiness may no longer do so. Resisting this natural flow only causes pain. When we expect things to remain the same, we set ourselves up for disappointment. Instead, by accepting impermanence, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. We learn to enjoy the present without the constant fear of losing it. Impermanence is not just about loss, it is also about renewal. Just as things fade, new opportunities arise. A chapter that ends makes space for a new beginning. The end of one experience allows for the start of another. Accepting this truth makes it easier to let go of what no longer serves us. When we stop clinging to the past, we create room for growth, for transformation, for new possibilities. Change is not something to fear, it is something to embrace. Understanding impermanence also helps us deal with hardships. Pain, like everything else, is temporary. No suffering lasts forever, no matter how overwhelming it feels in the moment. Time moves forward, and with it pain eventually fades. This knowledge provides resilience. When faced with difficulties, we can remind ourselves that they too will pass. Even the darkest moments are not permanent, and knowing this allows us to endure them with strength and patience. Accepting impermanence does not mean becoming indifferent or emotionless. It does not mean we stop loving, stop striving, or stop caring. Instead, it means we love without attachment, strive without fear, and care without expectation. We appreciate moments as they come, knowing they are fleeting. We invest in relationships, knowing that change is natural. We embrace experiences fully, not because they will last forever, but because their temporary nature makes them precious. When we stop fighting against the impermanence of life, we find freedom. We no longer waste energy trying to control what is beyond us. Instead, we focus on what we can control: our perspective, our actions, and our ability to find peace within change. Life is not meant to be silent, is often overlooked in a world that values constant communication, noise, and activity. People fill their days with conversations, entertainment, and distractions, rarely allowing themselves a moment of stillness. There is a deep discomfort with silence, as if it signals emptiness or loneliness. But in reality, silence is one of the greatest teachers. It allows for reflection, clarity, and the development of wisdom. Those who embrace silence learn to listen, not just to the world around them, but to themselves. They cultivate an inner stillness that leads to greater understanding, deeper insight, and a more profound connection with life. When the mind is constantly occupied with external noise, it has little space to think clearly. It reacts impulsively, clouded by the influence of others, emotions, and distractions. Silence, however, creates an environment where true thinking can take place. In moments of quiet, the mind slows down, allowing thoughts to be examined with greater depth. Instead of reacting, a person learns to respond with thoughtfulness. They begin to notice patterns in their thinking, to question their assumptions, and to see situations from a broader perspective. In this space of reflection, wisdom begins to grow. Silence also strengthens self-awareness. Many people fear being alone with their thoughts because they have never taken the time to truly understand themselves. They seek distractions to avoid confronting their emotions, doubts, or insecurities. But when one sits in silence, there is no escape. Only the mind, revealing itself as it truly is. This can be uncomfortable at first, but it is necessary for growth. By embracing silence, a person gains insight into their own desires, fears, and motivations. They learn to distinguish between thoughts that arise from deep understanding and those that are mere echoes of external influences. With this clarity, they become less reactive and more in control of their own mind. In silence, one also learns the value of patience. The modern world encourages instant responses, quick decisions, and immediate gratification. But wisdom is not rushed. It requires time, contemplation, and the ability to sit with uncertainty. Silence teaches a person to observe before speaking, to think before acting, and to wait before making judgments. It allows for deeper understanding, preventing impulsive mistakes that often come from speaking or acting without thought. Those who cultivate this patience are able to approach life with greater calmness and discernment, making decisions that are more aligned with long-term well-being rather than short-term emotions. Another lesson silence teaches is the power of listening. Many conversations are filled with noise, people speaking over each other, waiting for their turn to talk, rather than truly hearing what is being said. Silence, however, allows for deep listening. When a person is not focused on their own response, but is fully present, they begin to understand others on a deeper level. They pick up on subtle emotions, underlying meanings, and unspoken truths. This kind of listening strengthens relationships, builds empathy, and leads to deeper connections with others. Silence is also a source of creativity and insight. Some of the greatest ideas come not in moments of noise, but in stillness. When the mind is quiet, it is free to explore, to connect ideas, and to see things from a new perspective. Many thinkers, artists, and innovators have found their most profound inspirations in solitude, in the silence where their thoughts are not competing with external distractions. By stepping away from the constant flow of information and stimulation, a person gives their mind the space it needs to generate new ideas and insights. Embracing silence is not about rejecting the world, but about finding balance. It is about creating moments of stillness in a life filled with movement. It is about learning to listen, to reflect, and to understand. Those who make space for silence in their lives discover that wisdom is not something that must be sought outside. It is something that already exists within, waiting to be heard. Modern life is built on the idea that more is better. People chase after wealth, possessions, status, and validation, believing that accumulating these things will bring happiness and security. The desire for more never seems to end. Once one goal is reached, another appears, creating an endless cycle of wanting. Yet the more a person needs, the more they are bound by those needs. True freedom does not come from acquiring more. It comes from needing less. When a person learns to free themselves from unnecessary desires, they unlock a life of contentment, peace, and independence. The constant pursuit of more is exhausting. It creates stress, anxiety, and dissatisfaction, because no matter how much one gains, there is always something else to chase. People work long hours, sacrifice their time, and push themselves to exhaustion just to meet societal expectations of success. They believe that once they achieve a certain level of wealth or status, they will finally be happy. But happiness remains just out of reach, always attached to the next goal. When a person needs less, however, they step out of this endless race. They are no longer trapped by the pressure to acquire, and instead they find satisfaction in the simplicity of life. Needing less also means gaining control over one's own life. When a person is dependent on material wealth, they are also dependent on the systems that provide it. They may stay in jobs they dislike, tolerate unhealthy relationships, or compromise their values simply because they fear losing what they have. But when a person learns to live with less, they become less vulnerable to external forces. They can make decisions based on what truly matters, rather than out of fear of losing their possessions or status. They are free to walk away from situations that do not align with their values, because their happiness is not tied to external things. Financial freedom is another powerful benefit of needing less. Many people believe that wealth means having more money, but real wealth comes from needing less money to live happily. A person who requires little to be content is wealthier than someone who has millions but still feels unfulfilled. When one reduces unnecessary expenses and avoids the trap of consumerism, they gain financial stability. They are no longer enslaved by debt, excessive bills, or the pressure to maintain a certain lifestyle. They have the freedom to choose how they spend their time, rather than being forced to work endlessly just to sustain an expensive way of life. Beyond financial aspects, emotional freedom also comes from needing less. Many people seek validation from others, believing they need approval to feel worthy. They constantly compare themselves to others, chasing attention, admiration, or social status. But this dependence on external validation creates insecurity and anxiety. When a person learns to be content without needing praise or recognition, they become truly free. They no longer feel the need to prove themselves to others, and instead, they live in alignment with their own values and principles. Their self-worth is not dictated by opinions, trends, or expectations. It comes from within. Needing less also leads to a deeper appreciation for life. When people are always focused on what they lack, they fail to see what they already have. The pursuit of more blinds them to the beauty of the present moment. But when a person simplifies their desires, they begin to notice the richness of everyday life, the warmth of the sun, the joy of meaningful conversations, the peace found in solitude. Gratitude naturally arises when one stops chasing more and starts appreciating what is already present. Needing less is not about rejecting success, ambition, or progress. It is about breaking free from unnecessary attachments that create suffering. It is about recognizing that external things can enhance life, but they do not define happiness. True freedom is not found in having everything, but in realizing that one does not need everything to be fulfilled. When a person embraces simplicity, they discover a life of peace, balance, and true independence. True freedom is not found in abundance, but in simplicity. When we free ourselves from unnecessary desires, we break the chains that keep us constantly chasing more. By needing less, we gain more peace, more clarity, and more control over our own lives. Happiness is not something to be acquired, it is something to be uncovered by letting go of what is unnecessary. In the end, the less we need, the lighter we walk, and the freer we become.